Have you ever perceived the hidden law of power? There are certain people who, without a single word, can shift the energy of an entire room. They don't threaten, they don't beg. Their weapon is a single action, a strategic withdrawal. Those around them become unsettled. They begin to question, to chase. Now place yourself in that role. Imagine you stop reacting instinctively to every stimulus, that you replace a knee-jerk reply with considered silence, that you choose a conscious retreat over an emotional explosion. When you become inaccessible, who truly becomes desperate? Who gets enraged? Who provokes you relentlessly just to squeeze a drop of emotion out of you? It's about learning what Jung called individuation, that sacred process of becoming whole, authentic, and complete. How much longer will you dance like a puppet every time someone pokes at your wounds? Perhaps it is time to cut those invisible strings, to step back, and to become a mystery. Why? Because being always available makes you predictable and cheap. People begin to treat you like an emotional band-aid applied when they need comfort, validation, or attention, and then discard it in the trash. It is a disguised plea for approval, a desperate attempt to avoid rejection, and a futile effort to control how others see you. But this control comes at the highest price, your peace. It's your finite, precious life energy being squandered as if it were infinite. No one respects what they don't have to earn. No one values what is always there. You do and notice this because you are trapped by a false promise. If I am there for everyone, someone will be there for me. They love the function you provide: validation, companionship, distraction, an emotional dumping ground. So when you change, when you erect a boundary, when you refuse to react, these same people get agitated, accuse you, and say you've become weird. It's not because you've changed, but because for them, you have become non-functional. What lies behind this almost automatic urge to respond, justify, and please? The answer lies in what Carl Jung called psychic energy, and that is what we will dissect next. Because your energy is your only true currency, and if you don't learn to guard it, someone will use it against you. If this message is shaking you to your core, hit the subscribe button and join this awakening. Thank you for your support. This logic is fundamentally flawed in the real world. This process begins the moment you grasp that conscious silence is more powerful than 1,000 arguments, or a more profound question: who deserves your absence? And that a withdrawal born from awareness, not escape, is a supreme act of power. All of this acts as a mirror, reflecting not you, but their own profound lack. It is precisely this mask that keeps you excessively available. You say, "I'm fine," when you are suffocating. You reply to messages instantly, even when you are exhausted. You explain, you justify, you defend, as if you owe the world something. But the truth is, the more you place yourself at the center of others' stages, the more you vanish from your own. More importantly, it ruthlessly reveals how you have been manipulated without even realizing it. You were conditioned from childhood to be present, to respond quickly, to please, to say yes when your soul was screaming no. You have been hypnotized by society into believing your worth is measured by your utility to others. But here is a truth no one has dared to tell you with this clarity. This hyper-availability is not a virtue. It is an invisible prison you have built for yourself. You continuously offer yourself up for the sake of a false harmony, to keep people who were never truly with you in the first place. What do you think would happen? Day after day, what is left? A bone-deep fatigue, annoying frustration, and a spiritual emptiness you cannot explain. Let me tell you the cause. You are far too available to those who don't even deserve a moment of your silence. The moment they retract their attention, the air seems to freeze. The answer lies here. When you cease being a 24/7 supplier of emotion, energy, and psychological validation, the ecosystem around you collapses. This is because most people are accustomed to navigating you through your predictability, to draining you through your impulsive reactions. But the moment you choose to withdraw this availability, the rules of the game change. Those who thought they had you figured out will be horrified to discover they know nothing about the real you. As Carl Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead to an understanding of ourselves. Think about it. With every forced yes, every instant reply, every emotional defense, you are engaging in a fire sale of your life force. This message isn't about turning your back on the world. It's about choosing yourself. So I look you in the eye and ask you now, how much longer will you allow the emotions of others to pilot your life? Because when you are no longer easily accessible, everything changes. As long as you believe you have an obligation to be constantly online, emotionally or otherwise, you are destined to be manipulated, drained, and swiftly forgotten the moment you are no longer useful. Carl Jung spoke of the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted, loved, and recognized. Constant availability is a slow-burn form of self-betrayal. The people who want you available at all times don't love you. Here is the cruelest point. The more available you are, the less value others assign to you. What is too abundant becomes an emotional rag. So pause now and think, who truly deserves your time? Who deserves your focus, your presence, your listening ear? Before you answer, we must dig deeper. Why do we react so much? Why do we give in so easily? Carl Jung never saw the human mind as a machine that simply reacts to stimuli. For him, our psyche is an energy system. Every thought, every emotion, every action consumes a portion of that energy. When you defend yourself against a criticism not even worth acknowledging, when you respond to a provocation just to prove a point, when you engage in pointless arguments, when you try to please those who do not value you, you are spending your inner power on things that do not nourish you. Jung was clear on this. What you resist persists. The more you react, the tighter the chains become. The question is, are you consciously choosing where your energy flows, or are you letting the world squander it for you? But when it's poorly managed, you become invisible, reactive, and fragile. And the world has no mercy for those who give in easily. What makes you react automatically? What knocks you off your center? These are the exact points where your energy escapes, and that is where you must do the work. But the truth is far darker. The majority of your emotional responses are programmed, and those who understand this can manipulate you with ease. Opportunists don't need to raise their voice, threaten, or force situations. They just need to press the buttons you've left exposed, and you will react on cue every single time. It happens when you feel you owe something to the other person, when you believe you need to be available, need to help, need to understand, even when it is destroying you from the inside. When you start saying no, responding with silence, withdrawing instead of explaining yourself, the projections begin to crumble. The mask they put on you falls, and this leaves people deeply unsettled because they no longer know who you are. And worse, now they are forced to look at themselves. Not everyone is prepared for that. Are you ready to endure the silence that comes after the rupture? Because it is precisely in that silence that a new kind of power is born. And that is what we will talk about now. And by observing, you see patterns that previously went unnoticed. Emotional repetitions, manipulative games, cycles of self-sabotage. It's not because they miss you. It's because your silence takes away their narrative control. While you are speaking, you are still in their game. But when you are silent, you change the rules, and that unbalances anyone who thrives on your reaction. Silence allows for lucidity, and lucidity is dangerous for those who live to control you. And here is the central point. The manipulator doesn't need to control you. They just need you to keep reacting in the same way. The modern world is noisy. Everyone wants to be heard, to respond quickly, to win pointless debates, and to prove their point, even if it costs them their own peace. But there is a power that few know, and even fewer master, the power of silence. Not the silence of passivity or cowardice, but conscious, strategic, brutally lucid silence. The kind of silence that is not absence, but amplified presence. The silence you offer reveals the internal noise they don't want to hear. And then comes the attack, the criticism, the emotional drama. When you withdraw, when you stop feeding the cycle, the other's shadow begins to emerge. And this is unbearable for those who have always used you as an escape. Not because you are wrong, but because you stopped serving as a convenient mirror. The goal is not to become cold or indifferent, but to become selective, to become the sovereign of your own self. But there is another side to this phenomenon few notice. As others project onto you, you become the receptacle for these images. But only as long as you are useful to them. None of this is by chance. They are not relating to you. They are relating to an idea of you, to the role you have agreed to play. And why do you agree? Because you are afraid of disappointing, afraid of not being loved, afraid of being abandoned. The more emotionally available you are, the more you become a blank canvas for these projections. And what happens to someone who is perpetually drained? They become vulnerable. And when you are vulnerable, you become prime prey. Because now we are entering a darker territory, silent manipulation. In the next part, we will explore how opportunistic people feed on your energy and why your unavailability completely disarms these psychological games. Get ready to look into the eyes of those who have been draining you without you even realizing it. This means knowing how to say no without guilt, how to remain silent without feeling like a coward, and how to observe before acting. How many times have you spent hours ruminating on what you should have said, or trying to understand why someone treated you poorly? This is your energy being siphoned away with no return. You are keeping ghosts alive that should have died long ago and feeding dynamics that only exist because you insist on responding. Because true power lies not in reaction, but in the choice of when and how to act. And this is only possible when you know yourself well enough to recognize your own impulses. Manipulators, opportunists, and the emotionally needy can smell this vulnerability like a shark smells blood in the water. They notice you don't know how to guard your energy, that you react to everything, that you are always trying to fix the world, and they take advantage of it. Every time you react impulsively, you are hemorrhaging psychic energy. People who live in a state of exhaustion are not weak. Their energy is simply critically mismanaged. Jung said that a healthy psyche is one that knows how to keep energy within its own system. How many times have you lost sleep over an unresolved conversation? Psychic energy is like your personal force field. When well guarded, it creates an undeniable presence. You walk into a room and command respect without a word. Therefore, begin to observe your own triggers. And here comes one of Jung's greatest revelations. When you conserve your energy, you shatter the projections others place upon you, and that is deeply unsettling for many. You believe you're in control. You think your reactions are conscious choices. Carl Jung called this projection, the psychological mechanism by which people cast onto others what they cannot see in themselves. That friend who only reaches out when they are in a crisis. That partner who always needs you to save the day. That person who praises you. The most effective manipulation doesn't happen in shouting matches. It happens in the silence of guilt. But when you stop reacting, the game is over. Your unavailability is a threat because it forces others to confront their own emptiness. Jung said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." But what about you? Are you ready to deal with the discomfort of being misunderstood, rejected, or even attacked for protecting yourself? You will understand why silence can be the most devastating weapon of the human psyche, and how it completely changes the dynamic between you and the world. Carl Jung saw silence not as a void, but as fertile ground for inner transformation. When you stop reacting, you begin to observe. Have you noticed how some people panic when you don't respond, when you don't explain yourself, when you simply disappear? True transformation begins when you firmly decide to become selective, and this requires emotional discipline. Conscious unavailability is not about being cold, arrogant, or indifferent. It's about no longer being accessible to anyone at any time for any reason. It's about taking full control of your own energy, your own time, your own peace. You do not need to explain your silence. You owe nothing to anyone but yourself. And this, for many people, is unforgivable. Because when you refuse to explain yourself, you take away the other person's power to keep you within an emotional narrative where you are always the helpful, understanding, accessible one. Observe who starts to distance themselves from you when you become more reserved. Observe who tries to provoke you when you stop reacting. When you say no to the world, you are saying yes to yourself. Because your emotional absence will expose wounds they do not want to face. It will reveal how much they depended on your emotional chaos to feel in control. In the final part, we will talk about this, about the rebirth that only happens when you have the courage to be misunderstood, to be alone, and to become whole on your own. It's time to understand why the solitude of the strong is the path to true freedom. And it is at this moment that the rupture comes. First comes the silence, an uncomfortable silence that seems to scream inside you. The people who feel uncomfortable with your absence, they reveal that they never wanted you. They wanted the role you played. And now that you no longer fit, they don't know what to do with you. And that is liberating. The solitude of one who no longer betrays themselves to keep others close. And in that space where there was once confusion, clarity enters. A part of you has already understood that being loved means nothing if you have to abandon yourself for it. And that true self-love begins when you choose yourself, even if it costs you being alone for a while. You will distance yourself from places, but you will reconnect with your essence. Are you willing to pay the price of being you? If this message resonated with you, write in the comments, "I choose my peace." Let's see how many here are ready for this transition. And don't forget to keep watching the next video. It's more important than you can imagine. See you there. The start of a life where you are no longer available for emotional crumbs, for mind games, for voids disguised as affection. Now you only accept what resonates with your peace, with your truth, with your wholeness. You will become misunderstood, but finally you will begin to be respected. Because when you are no longer available for anything, you become valuable, rare, unforgettable. Where there was once anxiety, peace enters. Where there was once neediness, a new kind of strength enters, the strength of being whole within yourself. You wonder if you did the right thing, if you are being too harsh, if you are losing people who liked you. And that is exactly what you are doing when you decide to become unavailable. You are not fleeing the world. You are returning to yourself. But gradually, this silence transforms. It begins to cleanse, to calm, to heal. And with the rupture comes the pain, the loneliness, the estrangement, the feeling that you are losing something, when in fact you are just freeing yourself. When you withdraw from a toxic environment, you are reaffirming that your peace is worth more than any false connection. And when you stop explaining yourself, you begin to be respected, even if it's by few. Observe who accuses you of changing when you finally start to protect yourself. These are not signs that you are wrong. They are proof that you have begun to break free. This starts with small actions, not responding immediately, breathing before reacting, leaving a discussion before being dragged into chaos, turning off your phone without guilt, saying, "Not today, I'm not interested, I won't get involved." A time of inner retreat where you relearn to listen to your own voice without the world's interference, where you rebuild your identity not based on the gaze of others, but from your own center. But here's the most important part. You do not need to justify your absence. Carl Jung understood that every process of individuation goes through a period of isolation. But this is not a depressive isolation. It is a sacred isolation. You will think you are being selfish. You will hear that you are being too harsh. But this is part of the deconstruction process. You have spent your life being conditioned to put yourself second. It's natural that change causes discomfort, not only in you, but in everyone who benefited from your old version. Want to know a good litmus test for your evolution? Being unavailable is uncomfortable at first. You will feel guilty. Conscious unavailability is the foundation of self-determination. But not everyone is ready for this type of presence. But what happens after that? What comes after the distancing? What is born from the silence? When you stop being available to everyone, something profound begins to happen. And then comes solitude, but not the solitude of absence. It is the solitude of total presence, your own. The solitude of the strong. Carl Jung said that the process of individuation, becoming who you really are, requires you to distance yourself from the collective, that you disidentify from the mask, that you walk alone for a while. It is at this point that you stop being a reactor and become a creator. You cease to be shaped by circumstances and begin to shape your reality from within. You will lose people, but you will find yourself. And make no mistake, this is a rebirth, a new beginning. And if you have made it this far, it's because a part of you is already ready for this new path. Now tell me in the comments, are you ready to be misunderstood, rejected, or even hated in the name of your inner freedom?